Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Adrian with Talkin with TGE. Super stoked today. We have Andy Klosterman joining us from Peak Beverage. Everybody say hi, Andy.
How's it going?
Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Andy. I know you're so busy, not just with your business, but trying to help our industry get back up and going. So thank you again for being so gracious with your time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you as well.
Super. I'm going to jump right into a question that I thought about for you months ago. Was that, so let's fast forward a year from now, right? So it's okay. December, January 2021, 2022. Like, what are your hopes for our industry a year from now?
In that time frame, honestly, I am expecting us to be full steam ahead. My hope and my expectation actually is that we're just rocking and rolling, especially in December. I think, you know, I try to put my head into the future a lot and determine, you know, what are the problems and issues of that. It's kind of like what I do a lot nowadays, and communicate that to various like government entities and in the industry. And, you know, I can't fathom after this begins to come to a close, which I do expect will happen in 21, in the middle of 21 or so. I can't fathom people not wanting to have some sort of huge, joyous moment. I can't fathom companies not wanting to do giant holiday parties. I can't fathom people not wanting to get out and gather again with folks that they haven't seen in a year or two. I mean, it's unbelievable. The social like fabric of what we're so used to in this industry that we provide has been literally non-existent for such a long time. I'm expecting this rubber band effect, and I really think we're going to be in an amazing position in that time frame. So that's not only my hope, it's my expectation. And I think I want to get people to think about not just like wishing that it's going to happen, but laying the foundation for that to happen now. So we're talking a lot about consumer confidence and stuff like that in the future. And I think it's, I'm really optimistic that that's going to happen.
That's great to hear. Have you always been somewhat politically active, or did this kind of bring that out of you? Like, I mean, when I thought about the people that I thought who would be like in the forefront of this and like getting in people's faces, I'll be super honest, I didn't think it was going to be you. And I'm so happy.
Me neither.
Pleasantly surprised. So I'd love to kind of hear your motivation and your thought behind that.
Yeah. So I think one critical component of it is that I come from a military family. So my father, and pretty much, you know, on a long line, actually all the way up till like 1750s, have always like been in the military for a long time. And so, you know, I have this perception. I was kind of raised with this perception of the government being in service to the people under which it governs. So like if you think about like someone in the military, you know, they understand, I think more so than anyone, that you are there to serve, and you are there to you know, even put your life on the line for the good of the country. And so I think it was really easy for me to understand. And I think a lot of folks, they see the government instead as like a entity that is superior, or an entity that tells you what to do, and they're like omniscient and omnipotent, and they're perfect in every way, and they're never wrong. But the reality is that the government is just a collection of people, and in some cases they're really intelligent people, and in some cases you know, it's they have fallacies just like the rest of us. And so I don't know, that's just kind of how I was raised and how I thought about it. But another key component for me was that I'm in a portion of the industry, in the beverage world of the events industry, that is brand new, I want to say, or just kind of was like created out of nothing. And to be honest with you, I've been in a very similar position where the government has been in a position of talking about my company, and my company being at risk of, exactly what the industry is going through right now, at risk of, somebody in the government changing their mind on how we should be operating or if we should be operating at all. And so I've had regular conversations ever since Peak began with various governmental agencies. I actually ran bills in Congress and had discussions with lots of people in the executive branch. And so, I've been doing this all behind the scenes. I didn't understand that, I could take I could take that skill set and put it into play in a positive way for our industry. And so it wasn't much of a change for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And I did see, actually, when I was kind of, investigating your Facebook a little bit, I did see the military picture, which looked like, was that your brother and your mom and your dad, I think? That your dad was in the Navy then?
Yeah. So, he was a helicopter pilot. I grew up in San Diego, near North Island, so lived out there for a while. He's now in some crazy, his title is like the executive director of the 3rd Fleet Synthetic Warfare Training Program. So, he's a pretty smart guy. I take a lot of what I do, I think, in government relations from him. And, he'd be the guy that's greeting the Secretary of Defense or whatever when they're touring the facility and that sort of thing. And so, I think a lot of my perception of the government, and I think Jeremy Bronson's kind of the same, but from a different background. Our perception is that, the government should be here to help us and not to hurt us. And I think that's, it's hard to wrap your head around that sometimes. But at the same time, people need to understand that they're not perfect and that you can't just assume that they know what's best for, especially for our industry, without us working with them to get to that point.
Right. But so with your family being in the military, you didn't want to go that route, obviously. You ended up here.
Yeah, it was funny. There was a time I was about to go to college at SDSU, and I mean, that's always the route I thought I would go. We literally went to the recruitment office, and me and my brother, we wanted to be Navy SEALs, right? And so we had the Humvee that was going to show up at 7 a.m. the next morning in front of our house to pick us up for boot camp. And my dad, he wanted a different path, I think, for us, and so he made it very clear, I think, to us that if we go down this route, we'll be on our own, not on our own, but just it's a route you can't really come back from easily, if that makes sense, once you do it. And so I think he called the guys who were going to come in the Humvee and yelled at them and kind of made us second guess that decision. And so a year or two later, that's where I went off to college, and I got sort of addicted to the event industry through my college activities. But my brother decided, that he would rather go that route and experience it, and so he was in the Marines for 4 years. I think he had good and bad experiences. I don't think it was exactly the although you only see the positive side, right, when you look at it from the outside in. But he got out of it, and I think he had a great time. And so, yeah.
That's a great story. I really like that. That is definitely why I like doing this kind of thing, because I would have never probably ever heard that story before out of your mouth. And I think that's just awesome. So one last Facebook question that I have for you that I was curious about. So it just doesn't seem like you really share out much stuff. You kind of just, you're not super, super active. Obviously your business is very active on social media. So I find that a lot of times that people's businesses that are very active, personally, people are not really my thing. But I did see you definitely share out a pretty famous Obama statement about, complacency being the greatest threat to democracy. And, obviously there's a lot in that statement, but I was curious, what does that really mean to you? And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of ties into what I was saying earlier. It's especially applicable in our industry. It's especially applicable to people that don't believe that the government is there to help them, or have no experience in communicating with the government, and understanding that. And so I think the greatest threat to our industry in all this, it is complacency. Like on all the calls I do, and everything that we involve people in this industry, I always try to put it out there. Email me, call me if you have input on this issue. I mean, you'd be surprised. I've got probably less than 10 emails this entire time from the entire industry, on like their input or their thoughts. Like, are we on the right track? Are we on the wrong track? And I think people put a little bit too much trust in the fact that the government or other people like know their situation well enough to be able to address it, right? Because we're all unique, especially in this industry. There's a bunch of different unique niches and business types that we have, and so when you look at something like the restaurant association or the hotel association or anything like that, you get to this point where you begin to understand that the government does not necessarily know what's best for you unless you have that communication. They're not going to research our industry for us and then assume what the solutions are, and they will try to do that, but it'll always be wrong unless we do that with them, if that makes sense. So I think there's a general, and not just in our industry, but there's a general complacency, and there's a silent majority issue in the US, and that's what Obama was kind of speaking to in that, where there's not enough people involved in politics. And people think it's this complex, scary thing, and it's not. It's just people. It's people that are elected to represent you, and you need to have communication with them to have your needs known. It's just you wouldn't go to the grocery store and just immediately go to the checkout aisle and expect someone to know what you want in the grocery store. Yeah, you've got to have that communication. So. That I really hope that there's more movement on getting more voice. Like don't feel afraid to have your voice be heard. Everyone's voice is valuable, and if you don't say it, if you don't say anything, then you're just agreeing with whatever's going on. I hope people understand that.
So the question that I kind of wanted to segue into with a little bit of fear. So you had asked me if I had, seen your building, and it's a beautiful space. It's very impressive. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, this place is amazing. And I was also a little bit like, damn, this looks, like as a business, I was like, they're like risk, right? Like that's what it felt. That's what it felt like for me, for you. I was like, this is some risk. So part of me was like slightly terrified for you, and part of me was like really impressed at the same time.
Yeah.
You're like, hey man, like you got to go for it, right? You're like, you're going to have this business one time. Like, what are you going to do with it? Like, let's go. So I guess like, I'm kind of curious about, obviously how you feel about that space now, and what kind of prompted you guys making also like such a big step. Like that was obviously a big step for your business to do that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, when we were in like a industrial complex in Wheat Ridge before this. It was probably like any other person in our industry. And so with a combination of like legal changes, so like Colorado has very powerful, and this was sort of what I was alluding to before, but it's got very powerful lobbying organizations backing like liquor store entities and that sort of thing. And so there's this whole movement to get away from delivery only entities, mostly because of stuff like Amazon, GoPuff, Whole Foods. There's a huge push to get alcohol and groceries and food online and have them delivered. It's an enormous market, and it just completely blew the lid because of COVID. You're talking 500-600% gains in almost across the board, right? So that was a powerful motivating factor, and so we really wanted to highlight the fact that we had a liquor store this entire time, and we looked at I think it was about 113 possible sites for where we could go to. We really wanted to find a site where we had like a retail exposure, while also being able to run our catering division. So we found this building. It was completely empty and everything like that. And I learned a whole bunch about financing and all that sort of thing about all this. And you're right, like that was the constant battle that I had within my head. It was like, this is a huge move, but like, I think we can do it, and yada, yada, yada. And so that, that was a good year of my life, is debating that question in my head. And so, I don't know what when we finally pulled the trigger or whatever, I think it was just like our lease was up, so we got to do this, But what I will say is that if we had not moved in, what the crazy part about this, like stuff like this happens to me where like fate gets in the way, So if we had not moved into this building, we probably would not have had like a liquor store presence like we have right now. We wouldn't be in a location that lacked a delivery presence like downtown Denver does. And I think it was the only possible way we could have gotten as far as we did during COVID, because if we moved back, like into a lesser known area or anything like that, we wouldn't have been able to immediately pivot and focus on our liquor store and delivery business. And I mean, yeah, it enabled us really to keep a lot of staff around for a while. It didn't, our cash flow is still, super low, just like everybody else, I'm sure, but it allowed us to not completely shut down. And so I don't know if you were at the opening party or whatever that we did in March. It was like March 6th or something like that, I want to say. But I know your team was invited, but it was like it was the weekend before everything shut down. That was when the grand opening happened for this facility, which is just insane to think about. Like March 6th is basically when this thing opened. And the next weekend it immediately was like, okay, it's a COVID life raft. And so, yeah.
So I'm curious about, just obviously, you have a very different path than from some of the people that I've spoken with as far as kind of your journey to being an entrepreneur. Some people were kind of raised by those sort of individuals, and it seems like your dad obviously had that mindset, even though it was, translated to another industry. He still very much seems like he had that that nature about him. So I'm curious if you've ever been given any advice that you just try to follow in your business, and like something that was very impactful to you.
Well, yeah, there's I try to surround myself with good advisors. I've been in a number of advisory like organizations and that sort of thing to advise me, because I think the worst thing as an entrepreneur you can do is think that you're right about everything, and not take other people's opinions and thoughts into play. And it took me a while to learn that, and it takes a while to learn that you're not the smartest person in the world. But when you get when you get good advisors on your side, that really makes the difference. So I never like to make decisions in a box or in a silo. I like to use hopefully like others in the leadership team to help me make those decisions. But it's been a journey for sure. I think sometimes, like as entrepreneurs, it's easy to let your ego get in the way of doing the right thing, and sometimes making a decision that you wouldn't normally make. And so I think it's important that we constantly challenge ourselves with that type of thought.
Because you kind of hit on something I think of when I think about Peak, is that I think about you guys from like a fast growth sales, like push approach, which I honestly feel is hugely lacking in our industry. Like that level of just like, yeah, we're going to go out there, we're going to make these connections, we're going to get these big deals. Like the big deals are where impact is made and where jobs are created, and we're going to go get those. And you guys were able to get a lot of them very quickly. So I think that if anything, that mentality, you know, while it can lead to growing pains, it serves you very well, in my opinion.
Thanks. Yeah, it's funny because I don't know if many people know this, but the company was started with $2,000. It was part of my savings and part of Steve's savings. Actually, Ray put in like 1,000 a few months after that, but that's how we started, right? And so I think it was by mistake, or it was by, I guess, fate or mistake. It wasn't by design, that we developed that mentality of like sales or survive and like, you know, hit the ground running. It was really like, man, we have $100 left in the bank account. Let's like, how are we going to survive? How are we going to get beyond this? And that's really like how the company was born. And I think we still maintain that mentality today. And you know, I see a lot of companies out there, and I talk to fellow like entrepreneurs and stuff where they start with like big massive loans, and you look at you know like the Googles of the world and the unicorn type companies, and they raised $2 billion today with like $0 in revenue, and you're like what does that do to the psyche and to the culture of that company? And you know, like it's like profit doesn't even matter, like the cash flow doesn't even matter. So you know, it's been a journey for sure. But yeah.
You speak exactly what, you know, is what in my readings is referred to as the underdog mentality, that like you didn't start with a lot of money in the bank, you got to go out and you got to sell in order to pay a bill. Like it's kind of that simple.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
bootstrapping.
This, you know, payroll's coming up, we're a new business, I got to go sell something.
Yeah.
To make that happen.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that if we can all obviously keep that mentality through success, I think that's probably part of the problem, is that once people get there, they're like, oh, I don't need to hustle that hard. And it seems like you guys have continued to hustle throughout your success, you know, just to keep pushing.
Yeah, well, we keep putting all of our profit into continuing to grow instead of like keeping the profit. so that's also what's pushing us forward.
Your vacation house, come on. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know. Like, yeah, one year peak's gonna stop growing, and I'm gonna disappear for a while. But
reference that, like, you know, and you maybe in like a jovial way that, you know, you might have read a Forbes article and that might have impacted something that you did in your business. Do you read a lot of, you know, business type books, and or do you read blogs? What do you kind of follow that maybe gives you inspiration or sparks ideas?
Yeah, I'm an avid reader. I probably like I won't say I read too much, but I take in a lot of advice from numerous sources, or at least I try to. I always like having like a mentor. I like reading articles on a regular basis from like Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine is really good, that sort of thing. We're doing EOS, so like Entrepreneur Operating System in our company. Do you guys use that too? Yeah, it's amazing, and honestly, it was funny. I tried to build my own like EOS system before I learned about EOS, and it was the most complicated system. You should ask Adam about it. But yeah, it was way too complicated. It took way too long, and so I had to get some humility to unwind that. But yeah, if there's one thing I think I do well, it would be that I don't just like read a book. If I read a book and then I like something within that, especially like a business oriented book, I will literally like highlight, mark it up, and then I will take that book and I will bring it into my business, and I will literally put into practice step by step like what it says to do. And it upsets the hell out of everybody because there's a lot of movement. But it's really helped to like launch new things and to get systems and processes in place in a much quicker way. But you know, it's not perfect. I'm working on it.
Andy, I so appreciate you chatting with me today. some of my absolutely favorite things were the fact that you were really close to being a Navy SEAL. What I super gravitated to was that, you know, that the government and these people are here to help us. So we should ask them for help, and we should work with them, because again, why should we ever expect these people to know everything about who we are? Like, that's just, and I think I was even guilty of that. And I was like, yeah, of course they don't know who I am. I have to tell them. So I think that was super powerful. And I really enjoyed hearing about, you know, your team, as well as the kind of take no prisoners, and I won't use a profanity, but, you know, I guess balls out approach to the way you guys have gone after it. And
is that not using profanity there?
I mean, I guess I did use profanity, so I'll just have to click that little check mark on YouTube now. So
nice. That works. That works. I like that saying. I'm going to steal it.
Balls out.
Balls
like,
out.
well, Adrian said balls out on my interview, so now we can say it.
We're gonna put it on the wall of the salespeople. You know,
I mean,
they know where we're coming from.
You know, it's not gender specific. You know, anybody can use that and just take some ownership of it.
Exactly.
But thank you again, Andy. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. And I hope everybody enjoyed listening to some of Andy's stories that maybe you wouldn't have heard otherwise.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. This was a very entertaining experience, and definitely going to stay tuned for all your future interviews as well. This is really cool that you're doing this. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, Andy.